3 weeks ago, I almost bled to death on a delivery table, alone, in the same hospital where I save other women's lives every single day. My baby's father had walked out 6 months before. My mother was 4 hours away with a bad heart. And my father? My father is worth $45 million, lives in a mansion with his new wife and his new kids and his new perfect life. When I finally swallowed every ounce of pride I had left and called him at 2 a.m, crying, bleeding, terrified, begging for help for the first time in my adult life, do you know what that man said to me? He said, "Genesis, I've been sending you $4,000 every month for 16 years. Is that not enough? What more do you want from me?" $4,000 a month, as if checks could hold my hand during 36 hours of labor, as if direct deposits could wipe my tears when my baby's father told me he wasn't ready, as if bank transfers could replace 16 years of empty chairs at every graduation, every birthday, every moment that mattered. That man really thought his money made him a father. Let me tell you something about men who confuse their wallets with their hearts. Let me tell you what happens when you spend your whole life proving you don't need someone who should have been there all along. And let me tell you what it cost me to finally understand that refusing help isn't strength. Sometimes it's just another prison we build for ourselves. If you've ever had a father who thought his wallet could replace his presence, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that like button if you know exactly what it feels like to build your entire life just to prove you didn't need someone who abandoned you. And I need you to comment below. Tell me what city you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever felt that ache of wondering why you weren't enough for your own father to stay. Because this story needs to reach every daughter who's still carrying her father's absence like a weight on her chest. This is my story, but I have a feeling it might be yours too. Now let me take you back to where this all started. I was 7 years old the night my world split in two. I remember hiding on the stairs in my nightgown, the one with the little yellow flowers my mama had bought from the thrift store. I remember pressing my face between the wooden rails, trying to make myself invisible, while my parents' voices crashed against each other like waves in a storm. "I can't do this anymore, Lorraine." That was my father's voice, Roland Price, the man I thought hung the moon. "I can't be poor and watch y'all struggle. I can't keep working 3 jobs and still not be able to give my family what they deserve." "So what are you saying, Roland?" My mama's voice was shaking. I'd never heard her sound like that before. Small, scared. "You're leaving. You're leaving your daughter." There was this silence that seemed to last forever. Then my father said the words that would echo through the next 27 years of my life. "I'll send money. I'll send money every month. I promise. Once I build something, once I become somebody, I'll be able to give y'all everything." I heard the front door open. I scrambled down those stairs so fast I nearly fell. By the time I reached the window, my father was already in his car, an old Toyota with rust spots on the doors. I pressed my little hands against the cold glass and watched those red taillights disappear down our street. He never looked back, not once. And you know what? He kept his promise about the money, $4,000 every single month like clockwork. The checks started coming when I turned 18. First one arrived 3 days after my birthday. No card, no letter, just a check with his signature and a return address I didn't recognize. I remember holding that first check in my hands, staring at his handwriting, wondering if this was supposed to make me feel something, feel loved, feel remembered, feel like I had a father. All I felt was empty. My mama worked herself half to death raising me alone. 3 jobs. Cleaning houses during the day, nursing shifts at night, catering on weekends. I watched that woman pour everything she had into making sure I never wanted for anything that truly mattered. Love, attention, presence. She gave me all of it even when she was so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. And where was Roland Price building his empire? Marrying a wealthy woman named Victoria, whose family connections helped launch his real estate business. Having 2 more children, a son and a daughter, who got the father I was denied. Living in a mansion while my mama and I shared a 2-bedroom apartment with peeling wallpaper and a radiator that only worked half the time. But you know what? I took that pain and I turned it into fuel. I graduated top of my class in high school, full scholarship to college. Then medical school, because I wanted to spend my life bringing babies into this world, helping mothers, being present for the most important moments of people's lives. Everything my father never was for me. Do you know how much medical school costs? $287,000. I had scholarships covering part of it, but the rest loans, all on me. I worked part-time jobs, lived off ramen and determination, and never once touched those checks. Every month another envelope would arrive, $4,000, and every month I would put it in a drawer without opening it. 16 years of uncashed checks, 192 of them, $768,000 just sitting there. Some people might call that foolish. Almost $800,000 gathering dust while I ate dollar store groceries and worked double shifts to pay off my loans. But every uncashed check was my way of screaming something I could never say out loud. I don't need you. I never needed you. Your money can't buy back the years you missed. Your money can't fill the empty seat at my graduation. Your money can't replace the father I deserved. I became Dr. Genesis Price, OB/GYN resident physician at one of the best hospitals in Chicago. I did it on my own, without him, without his checks, without anything but my mother's prayers and my own stubborn refusal to let his absence define me. Or at least that's what I told myself. The truth is, his absence defined everything. Every relationship I ever had with a man, I was waiting for him to leave. Every time someone tried to help me, I pushed them away, because I learned at 7 years old that people who are supposed to love you will always find a reason to walk out that door. I built walls so high nobody could climb them. I called it independence. I called it strength. I called it not needing anybody. But walls don't just keep people out. They keep you locked inside alone with your wounds, pretending you're not bleeding. I was 34 years old before those walls finally came crashing down. His name was Marcus Thompson, corporate lawyer, 6 feet 2 inches of ambition wrapped in a tailored suit. We met at a hospital fundraiser, one of those events where doctors and lawyers and business people mingle over expensive wine and pretend to care about charity. He pursued me hard. This man was relentless. Flowers at my hospital, texts that actually made me laugh, plans he followed through on which in my experience was rare enough to feel like a miracle. After 2 years together, I started to believe. Maybe not all men leave. Maybe some of them stay. Maybe I could finally stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and just be happy. Then I got pregnant. It wasn't planned. I was 34 years old, drowning in the final year of my residency, working 80-hour weeks, and suddenly I'm staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. But you know what? After the shock wore off, I felt something I hadn't expected. Joy. Pure, terrifying, overwhelming joy. I was going to be a mother. I was going to bring a life into this world, and I was going to do it differently. I was going to be present. I was going to stay. I told Marcus over dinner at our favorite restaurant. I was nervous, my hands shaking around my water glass, but I was also hopeful. We'd talked about the future. We'd talked about marriage, about family, about building something together. His face when I told him. I'll never forget it. It was like watching a door close in slow motion. Genesis. He set down his fork, wiped his mouth with his napkin, every movement careful and controlled. I don't think I'm ready for this. We've been together 2 years, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We talked about a future. This is just happening a little sooner than we planned. Talking about it and actually doing it are different things. He couldn't even look at me. I need time to think. This is a lot to process. Time to think. That's what he said. I gave him time. Weeks of it. Weeks of him being distant, making excuses, always too busy for the doctor's appointments, always somewhere else when I needed him. I was 5 months pregnant when he finally told me the truth. I've been offered a position in Seattle. He said it like he was announcing the weather. Senior partner at a major firm. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I just stared at him. 5 months pregnant, already feeling the baby kick, already in love with this little life growing inside me. And us. My voice came out in a whisper. What about this baby? He finally looked at me then, and I saw it. The same look my father had the night he left, that combination of guilt and relief and the absolute certainty that he was already gone. "I'll send money." Those words, those exact words. "Child support. I'll do right by you financially. I promise." I felt something crack inside me, something I'd been holding together with tape and denial for 27 years. "Get out!" My voice didn't sound like my own. "Get out and don't come back." He left, just like my father, just like every man I'd ever let get close enough to hurt me. He walked out that door and moved to Seattle, and I was right back to being 7 years old, watching taillights disappear into the darkness. I was becoming my mother, and my daughter was going to become me. I worked until I was 38 weeks pregnant, partly because I had to. The hospital needed every doctor they could get, and partly because working kept me from thinking, from feeling, from falling apart. My water broke in the middle of a shift. I was checking on a patient, ironically, a first-time mother who was scared and alone when I felt it. That warm rush, that unmistakable moment when your body decides it's time ready or not. A labor and delivery nurse found me gripping the hallway railing, trying to breathe through a contraction. "Dr. Price." Her eyes went wide. Are you, oh God, we need to get you to a room?" I delivered babies for a living. I knew everything about what was supposed to happen. Nothing in my medical training prepared me for the fear I felt when the baby's heartbeat started dropping, when they rushed me into emergency surgery, when I heard someone say the word hemorrhage and felt the room spin. I lost a lot of blood, more than anyone should lose and survive. They had to give me a transfusion. When I finally woke up hours later, disoriented and terrified, a nurse I barely knew was standing beside my bed. "She's perfect," the nurse said, placing my daughter in my arms. 6 pounds, 2 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Perfect. I looked down at my baby's face, this tiny, beautiful, helpless human being who was depending on me for everything. Her eyes were closed, her little fist curled against her cheek, and in that moment I felt a love so fierce it took my breath away. I named her Soleil. It means sun in French, because even in my darkest moment, she was the light breaking through. Then I looked around that hospital room, and reality hit me like a truck. I was alone. My mother was 4 hours away with a heart condition that made driving dangerous. My father was a stranger who'd been reduced to monthly checks. The man who was supposed to be here, the father of this perfect little girl, was 2,000 miles away, starting his new life. I held my daughter and cried. Not gentle tears, gut-wrenching, body-shaking sobs that hurt my incision and made the monitors beep. I cried for myself at 7 years old, pressing my face against a cold window. I cried for my mother working 3 jobs with no one to help her. I cried for my daughter who deserved a father and was going to grow up without one, just like me. The nurse didn't say anything. She just dimmed the lights and closed the door, giving me privacy to fall apart. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of being home alone with a newborn. 3 weeks of trying to breastfeed with stitches in my belly. 3 weeks of no sleep, no help, no money coming in because FMLA doesn't pay your bills. It just promises you'll have a job to go back to if you survive. Day 5 at home. That's when I started to crack. Soleil wouldn't stop crying, not the normal newborn crying that pediatricians tell you about. This was hours of screaming her little face red and scrunched her tiny body rigid with some distress I couldn't identify or fix. I hadn't slept more than 45 minutes at a time since the delivery. My incision was still healing, which meant I couldn't lift her properly without pain shooting through my abdomen. My milk was barely coming in, so I was supplementing with formula I couldn't really afford. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw blood. My blood spreading across the delivery table, my life draining out of me. I was on the floor of my living room when my friend Tanya found me. Tanya is a labor and delivery nurse I'd worked with for 3 years. She's one of those women who just knows when something is wrong. She'd been texting to check on me, and when I stopped answering, she showed up at my door. "Genesis." Her voice was sharp with concern. "Oh, honey, no. No, no, no." I was sitting on the floor in dirty sweats, surrounded by burp cloths and empty formula bottles. Soleil was in her bassinet, still crying. I was crying too, but silently tears just running down my face like a faucet someone forgot to turn off. Tanya took charge immediately. She picked up Soleil, checked her over with practiced hands, and diagnosed colic within 30 seconds. Then she looked at me with eyes that saw everything I was trying to hide. "When was the last time you ate?" she asked. "Actually ate something, not just snacked over the sink." I couldn't remember. "When was the last time you showered?" 2 days, maybe 3. "Genesis." She crouched down in front of me, still holding my baby against her shoulder, with the ease of someone who'd spent decades with newborns. "You're not okay. You know you're not okay. Why didn't you call me?" "I didn't want to be a burden." The words came out automatic, the same words I'd been saying my entire life. "I can handle it. I just need to figure out a routine." "Girl." Tanya's voice was firm, but not unkind. "Look at yourself. You can barely stand up. You just had major surgery. Your body went through trauma. You cannot do this alone. Nobody can do this alone." "I don't have a choice." "You have choices. Where's your mama?" "She has heart problems. She can't make the drive, and she doesn't need the stress of taking care of me on top of everything else." "What about the baby's father?" "Seattle." "What about your daddy?" I went still. The way you go still when someone presses on a bruise you've been pretending doesn't exist. "I don't have a father." Tanya raised an eyebrow. "You told me once that your father sends you money every month. That doesn't sound like not having a father." "Sending money doesn't make someone a father. A check doesn't change diapers. A direct deposit doesn't hold you when you're scared." My voice cracked. "I've managed 34 years without him. I can manage this too." Tanya looked at me for a long moment. Then she sighed and handed Soleil back to me. "Okay, I hear you, but I'm going to say one thing and then I'll drop it." She gathered the dirty bottles and took them to my kitchen sink. "Pride is a luxury you cannot afford right now. Not with a newborn, not alone, not broke." She knew about my finances. She'd been there when I was calculating whether I could afford the hospital parking fees during my own delivery. "There's no shame in needing help," she said, quieter now. "The shame is in letting your baby suffer because you're too stubborn to ask for it." After Tanya left, I sat in the silence of my apartment and looked at my daughter's sleeping face. She was so small, so helpless, so completely dependent on me for everything, and I was failing her. My bank account had $847 in it. Rent was $1,800 due in 10 days. Utilities were past due. Student loan payments were deferred, but interest was still accumulating. I hadn't bought groceries in a week, and I was down to crackers and peanut butter. I was a doctor. I'd dedicated my life to taking care of other people, and I couldn't even take care of myself. That night I called my mama. I tried to sound okay. I'd been trying to sound okay for weeks. But mothers know. They always know. "Baby," her voice was soft and worried through the phone. "I can hear it. What's wrong? Tell me the truth." So I did. All of it. Marcus leaving the delivery, the hemorrhage, the fear, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the money running out. Everything I'd been holding behind my teeth for months came spilling out in ugly, honest torrents. "I'm coming up there," Mama said immediately. "I'm getting in my car right now." "No." I was firm about this. "Your heart, Mama. The doctor said you need to avoid stress. I am not going to be the reason you end up in the hospital." "Then what are you going to do? You can't keep going like this." Silence stretched between us. I knew what she was going to say before she said it. "Call your father." "No." "Genesis Marie Price, listen to me." She rarely used my full name. When she did, it meant something. "I kept you from that man for years because of my own hurt. I watched you grow up angry and determined to prove you didn't need him. And Lord knows that man failed you in ways I cannot excuse. Then why would I call him? Because holding on to that anger is killing you." Her voice trembled. "And because your daughter needs more than your pride can provide right now. She needs her grandfather, and you, baby, you need to finally heal this wound, one way or another. He doesn't deserve to meet her." "Maybe not. But you deserve to stop carrying this weight. 16 years is long enough." I sat in my dark apartment for hours after we hung up. Soleil was finally asleep, milk-drunk and peaceful, completely unaware that her mother was unraveling. I stared at the drawer, the one with 192 uncashed checks. 16 years of my father's guilt money sitting there, like evidence of everything he owed me that he never paid. Presents, time, attention, love. The clock on my phone read 2:17 a.m. when I finally did something I'd sworn I would never do. I called him. It rang 4 times. I almost hung up. Part of me was hoping for voicemail, hoping I could just leave a message and preserve what was left of my pride. Hello? His voice was groggy with sleep, but I recognized it instantly. Some things you never forget. The voice of the man who was supposed to protect you, but chose to leave instead. It's Genesis. A pause. Then his voice sharpened sleep falling away. Genesis, is everything okay? Are you all right? How strange, I thought. After 16 years of silence, his first instinct was still to ask if I was okay. I had a baby. My voice broke on the words. 3 weeks ago. I had a baby and I almost died and the father left and Mama is too sick to help and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm alone and I can't do this by myself anymore. I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe properly. 27 years of walls crumbling at 2 a.m. while my newborn daughter slept peacefully in the next room. Okay. It's okay. He was trying to sound calm, but I could hear something underneath. Panic, maybe. Or hope. Where are you? Are you in Chicago? Yes, same place I've been for 10 years, not that you'd know. He didn't take the bait. I can wire money tonight. How much do you need? Give me a number and I'll make sure it's in your account by morning. And just like that, all my vulnerability turned to ash. I don't want your money. The words came out hard and cold. That's all you ever think, isn't it? Something's wrong, throw money at it. Someone's hurting, write a check. Genesis, I'm trying to help. Know you're trying to do what you've always done. Buy your way out of being a real father. I didn't call you for money. Then what? He sounded genuinely confused. What do you need? Tell me what you need and I'll make it happen. I need you to understand something. I was on my feet now, pacing, my tiny living room voice rising. I have not cashed a single one of your checks, not one in 16 years. Do you know why? Silence on the other end. Because your money was never what I needed. I needed you. At my 8th birthday party, when I was the only kid whose dad didn't show up. At my high school graduation, when I walked across that stage and looked out at the audience hoping maybe, just maybe you'd be there. At my medical school white coat ceremony when they draped that coat over my shoulders and I'd earned everything I ever dreamed of and you were nowhere. Genesis, I didn't think you wanted me there. You never called. You never reached out. I was 7 years old when you left. 7. It wasn't my job to reach out. It was your job to stay. More silence. I could hear him breathing. I could hear decades of unsaid words hanging between us. You're right. His voice was quieter now. You're right about all of it. I thought if I couldn't give you everything, I shouldn't give you anything. I thought the money would, I don't know. Show you I was thinking about you. Show you I cared. Money doesn't care. People care. Presence cares. You were sending checks while your other kids got a father. That's not fair. None of this is fair. I was shouting now and I didn't care. I almost bled to death on a delivery table. I am alone with a 3-week-old baby and $800 to my name and enough student loan debt to buy a house. And my father who is worth $45 million, thinks that writing checks makes him a dad. I took a breath, trying to calm myself enough to finish what I needed to say. You asked what I want. I'll tell you. I want you to know that every check you ever sent was an insult. I want you to know that your money made me feel cheap. I want you to know that I became a doctor, a damn good doctor, without a single dollar of your help. And I want you to know that I will figure this out on my own too, just like I've figured out everything else. Genesis, please, let me help. You want to help. Then answer one question. In 16 years of sending those checks, did you ever once think about what I actually wanted? Did you ever consider that maybe your daughter didn't need money, that maybe she just needed her father to show up? The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then he said the words that shattered what was left of my heart. "I've been sending you $4,000 every month for 16 years. Is that not enough? What more do you want from me?" I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't believe that after everything I'd just said, after laying my wounds bare at 2 a.m. with a newborn in the next room, that was his response. "Goodbye, Roland." I hung up before he could say anything else. I stood there in my dark apartment phone still clutched in my hand, shaking so hard my teeth were chattering. Then I did something I'd never done in 16 years of receiving those checks. I walked to the drawer. I pulled out the entire stack. 192 envelopes with his name on the return address. I ripped open the first one, looked at the check with his signature and tore it in half. Then another, and another. I don't know how long I stood there ripping checks into pieces. 16 years of guilt money falling like confetti around my feet. $768,000 destroyed. It felt like nothing. It felt like everything. When Soleil started crying from her bassinet, I sank to the floor surrounded by the shreds of my father's inadequate love and cried with her. That's when my phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. "This is Camille, your sister. I know this is strange, but I've been watching from afar for years. I think there are things about Dad you don't know, things that might change how you see everything. Can we talk?" I stared at those words until my eyes blurred. My sister. I had a sister. And apparently she knew secrets about our father that I didn't. I looked down at the destroyed checks scattered across my floor, at my daughter crying in the next room, at the ruins of the life I'd tried to build without the man who should have been my foundation. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the tiny hope that somewhere in all this pain there was a truth I hadn't found yet. I texted back 3 words. "Tomorrow. Call me." Then I picked myself up off that floor, gathered my daughter in my arms, and faced the longest night of my life. Something was about to change. I could feel it in my bones. I just didn't know yet if it would save me or break me completely. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Between Soleil's feeding schedule and the text message burning a hole in my phone sleep was impossible. My sister. I had a sister. I knew about her, of course. I'd looked up Roland Price enough times over the years to know the basic facts of his new life. Wife named Victoria, son named Roland Jr., daughter named Camille, the perfect replacement family living in the mansion his success built, enjoying the father I was denied. But she'd reached out to me. After years of silence, after a lifetime of being strangers who shared DNA, Camille had found me and said she had things to tell me. Things that might change how I see everything. Part of me wanted to ignore her. What could she possibly say that would make any of this okay? What secret could justify 16 years of absence? But another part of me, the part that was exhausted and desperate and running out of options, needed to know. The next morning after I'd fed Soleil and put her down for her first nap, I made the call. She answered on the second ring. "Genesis." Her voice was different than I expected. Softer, almost nervous. "You said you had things to tell me." I wasn't in the mood for small talk. "So tell me. Can I just say something first?" She took a breath. "I've wanted to reach out to you for years. I found your social media when I was 23. I've been following your whole journey. Medical school, residency, everything. I was so proud of you even though we'd never met." "Why didn't you reach out sooner?" "Because of my mother." The way she said it carried weight. Bitterness, maybe, or resignation. "Victoria has spent my entire life making sure our family stayed separate from yours. She told me you didn't exist until I was 15 and found an old photo of Dad holding a baby girl. When I asked about it, she said you were from a previous mistake that Dad had moved on from." A mistake. That's what I was to them. A mistake Roland Price had moved on from. "I'm sorry," Camille said quickly. "That's not how I see you. That's never how I saw you. But you have to understand, my mother controlled everything. The narrative, the access, all of it. Dad wasn't allowed to talk about you. Your name was basically forbidden in our house." And Roland just went along with that. He let his wife erase his firstborn child. "It's complicated." Camille paused. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." There are things you don't know about Dad, things I only found out 2 years ago myself. Like what? Like the fact that he has a box hidden in his study, a box he thinks nobody knows about. It's full of you, Genesis. Every single thing he could find about your life. Newspaper clippings from your college graduation, a printout of the announcement when you matched into your residency program, screenshots of your social media posts, photos of you as a baby, as a little girl, letters he wrote but never sent. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not even close to forgiveness, but something. He's been watching you your whole life, Camille continued. He just never knew how to come back. And honestly, I don't think my mother would have let him, even if he'd tried. That doesn't excuse anything. No, it doesn't. I'm not trying to excuse him. I'm trying to give you the full picture because I think you deserve it. Why? Why do you care what I think about a man who abandoned me? Camille was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice cracked. Because I've spent my whole life being jealous of you. I almost laughed. Jealous of me, you had everything. The money, the house, the name, the father. I had a checkbook with legs. Her voice turned bitter. You know what my father missed. My college graduation because he had a business meeting in Dubai. My dance recital when I was 10 because he was closing a deal. Every single piano recital, soccer game, school play. He was never there for any of it. At least he was in the same city. At least he came home at night. Did he, though? He worked 18-hour days. When he was home, he was on his phone on his laptop handling business. The only time he ever really talked to me was when he was giving me advice on how to be more successful, more driven, more like him. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to know the difference between us, Genesis. You built your life to prove you didn't need him. I spent mine trying to earn 5 minutes of his attention, and neither one of us got a real father. I didn't know what to say to that. I'd spent so many years imagining Roland's other children living this perfect life with the perfect dad. It never occurred to me that his disease, his obsession with money and success, had infected that family too. There's something else, Camille said. Something you should know before you make any decisions about whether to let him back into your life. What? Those checks he sent you, the ones you never cashed. My jaw tightened. What about them? Dad set up a trust. Any check that wasn't cashed after 90 days got deposited into an account in your name. It's been accumulating interest for 16 years. I felt the floor tilt. What are you saying? I'm saying there's close to $800,000 sitting in a trust with your name on it. Money you didn't know about. Money my mother definitely doesn't want you to know about. $800,000. All those checks I'd torn up in self-righteous fury. All those envelopes I'd thrown in a drawer without opening. They hadn't just disappeared. They'd been growing, waiting, accumulating into a small fortune. Why are you telling me this? My voice came out harder than I intended. What's your angle? What do you want? I want my sister. Camille's voice broke. I've had a brother who treats me like competition, and a father who treats me like an investment portfolio, and a mother who sees everyone as either an asset or a threat. I want family. Real family. Someone who doesn't want anything from me except to be real. You don't even know me. I know you raised yourself. I know you became a doctor without a dollar of help from the man who owes you everything. I know you just had a baby alone and you're struggling and you're too proud to ask for help. She paused. I know you're more like Dad than either of you would ever admit. Stubborn, driven, terrified of being vulnerable. That hit somewhere deep. I'm not asking you to forgive him, Camille said softly. I'm asking you to let me be your sister. Whatever happens with Dad, whatever you decide, I want to know you. I want to know my niece. Is that so wrong? I looked at Soleil sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. This tiny girl who deserved a bigger family than I could give her alone. I don't trust easily, I said finally. I've been let down too many times. I know. I'm not asking for trust. I'm asking for a chance to earn it. Something in her voice reminded me of myself at 25. Desperate for connection. Hungry for something real in a world of transactions. There's going to be a storm coming, Camille added, her voice dropping. When my mother finds out, Dad knows about the baby, about you reaching out. She's going to try to protect her territory. She sees that trust fund as money that belongs to her children. She sees you as a threat. I don't want the money. I know, but she doesn't believe that. Nobody in my family understands doing things for reasons that aren't financial. She sighed. Just be prepared. Victoria Price doesn't lose gracefully, and she definitely doesn't share. A storm coming. I filed that away, adding it to the growing list of things I needed to worry about. I have to go, I said. Soleil's about to wake up. Can I call you again? Maybe come visit sometime? I hesitated. Every instinct I had screamed to keep my walls up to protect myself and my daughter from this family that had already caused so much damage. But Camille wasn't Roland. She wasn't Victoria. She was just a girl who'd grown up in a different kind of prison than mine, looking for a way out. You can call, I said. We'll take it from there. Thank you. The relief in her voice was genuine. Genesis, one more thing. Whatever Dad did or didn't do, he kept every single thing about you. He didn't forget. He just got lost. There's a difference. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment and tried to process everything she'd told me. A box full of my life hidden in his study. Letters he wrote but never sent. $800,000 I didn't know existed. A stepmother who saw me as a threat, a sister who wanted to be family, and somewhere in all of that, a father who had watched me from afar for 27 years, too broken or too proud or too scared to close the distance. I didn't know what to do with any of it, but for the first time in my life, I wondered if maybe the story I'd told myself wasn't the whole truth. Maybe there was another side I'd never let myself see. And maybe, just maybe, understanding that side was the first step toward finally letting go of the weight I'd been carrying since I was 7 years old. But I wasn't naive. Camille had warned me about Victoria. A storm was coming. And if there's one thing I'd learned in 34 years, it's that when rich people feel threatened, they don't fight fair. Whatever came next, I needed to be ready. 2 days later, Aunt Ruby showed up at my door with 3 grocery bags, a casserole dish, and absolutely no patience for my nonsense. Aunt Ruby is my mama's older sister. 65 years old, raised 4 kids on her own after her husband died in a factory accident, and has never met a problem she couldn't solve with prayer, good food, and brutal honesty. Your mama sent me, she announced, pushing past me into my apartment. Said you sounded like death warmed over on the phone and she was worried sick. Since she can't drive up here without giving herself another heart episode, I'm here to make sure you don't fall apart completely. Aunt Ruby, I'm fine. You didn't have to drive 3 hours. She stopped in the middle of my living room and turned to look at me. Really look at me, the way only older black women can, like they're seeing straight through to your soul. Child, you look like you haven't slept in a month. When's the last time you ate something that didn't come from a box? And why does this apartment smell like sour milk and sadness? I have a newborn. It's supposed to smell like this. She set down her bags and walked straight to Soleil's bassinet. Her face softened immediately when she saw the baby. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Look at this precious angel. She looks just like you did when you were born. She picked up Soleil with the practiced ease of a woman who'd raised 4 children and helped raise a dozen more. Soleil didn't even fuss, just settled into Aunt Ruby's arms like she'd found home. Now, Aunt Ruby turned back to me. You go take a shower, a real one, with soap. I'm going to feed this baby and clean up this kitchen, and when you come out, we're going to have a conversation. Aunt Ruby, I don't need a lecture right now. Did I say anything about a lecture? I said a conversation. Now go. You smell like exhaustion, and I can't think straight with that funk in my nose. I was too tired to argue. 30 minutes later, I emerged from the bathroom actually clean for the first time in days. Aunt Ruby had transformed my apartment. Dishes done, counters wiped, laundry started, and the smell of her famous chicken casserole warming in my oven. She was sitting on my couch, Soleil asleep against her chest, looking at something on the floor, the ripped checks. I'd forgotten they were still scattered everywhere. You want to tell me what this is about? Her voice was gentle, not accusatory. I sat down across from her. Those are 16 years of checks from Roland, $4,000 a month. I never cashed any of them. Aunt Ruby nodded slowly. Your mama told me about those. Said you kept every single one but never spent a dime. I didn't want his money. I know, baby, I know." She shifted Soleil slightly, looking at me with eyes that had seen too much to be fooled by surface answers. "Your mama told me to tell you something she should have told you a long time ago." My stomach tightened. "What?" "The truth about why Roland really left. Not the story you built in your head. The real truth. I know why he left. He chose money over his family. End of story." "Is it, though?" Aunt Ruby leaned back. "Baby girl, I was there. I was there when your mama and Roland were high school sweethearts, so in love it made the rest of us sick. I was there when they found out about you, scared but happy. I was there for all of it. Then you know he abandoned us. I know he made a choice that broke everyone, including himself." She sighed heavily. "But I also know the whole story, and that story is more complicated than your mama ever let you believe." "Then tell me." Aunt Ruby was quiet for a moment, gathering her words. "When you were 6 years old, Roland's mama got sick. Real sick. Cancer that had spread everywhere by the time they found it. Treatment was expensive experimental stuff that insurance wouldn't cover. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. I didn't know this. Mama had never told me about any of this. Roland was working 3 jobs trying to keep y'all fed and keep a roof over your heads. He didn't have that kind of money. Nobody in our families did, so he went to his own father for help. His father, your grandfather, who I only met once and hope to never meet again this side of heaven." Aunt Ruby's voice hardened. "That man looked at his own son begging for money to save his mother's life and laughed. Told Roland he was a failure, that he'd never amount to anything, that he couldn't even take care of his own family. What happened? Roland's mama died 6 weeks later. He sat by her bed every night after work, and she died anyway because he couldn't afford to save her. Something broke in that boy. Broke in a way that never quite healed. I felt something shift in my understanding. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something. After that, Roland became obsessed. Obsessed with money, with success, with never being helpless again. He started working even more hours, coming home later and later. Your mama would wait up for him dinner, cold on the table, you already asleep. "I remember," I said softly. "I remember waiting for him to come home to read me a bedtime story. He stopped coming. He stopped being able to be present. His mind was always somewhere else, always on the next deal, the next opportunity, the next step up. Your mama gave him an ultimatum, his family or his ambition. He couldn't do both. And he chose ambition. He chose survival, the only way he knew how." Aunt Ruby's eyes met mine. "It was wrong. Lord knows it was wrong. But he wasn't choosing money over you, baby. He was running from the feeling of being helpless. He was trying to build something so he'd never have to watch someone he loved die because he couldn't afford to save them. That still doesn't excuse leaving us. No, it doesn't." Aunt Ruby shifted forward. "But here's the part your mama never told you. The night Roland left after that big fight, he came back." "What?" 3 in the morning. I know because your mama called me crying, confused. She looked out the window, and there was Roland standing in the yard staring up at your bedroom window. She went outside and found him crying like she'd never seen him cry before. My heart clenched. He told her, "I can't be the father she needs right now. I'm broken Lorraine, but I swear to God I will provide for her. I will never let her want for anything. Just let me become something first. Let me become someone she can be proud of. Then I'll come back." "But he never came back." "No." Aunt Ruby's voice was sad. "He built his empire instead, and by the time he'd built it, too much time had passed. He didn't know how to cross the distance anymore. The shame was too big. The wall was too high." I sat with that for a long moment. The image of my father standing outside my window at 3 in the morning, crying, wanting to come back, but not knowing how. Why didn't Mama ever tell me this? Because she was hurt, because she was angry, because it was easier to let you believe he just walked away cold than to explain the complicated mess of why people fail the ones they love. Aunt Ruby reached over and took my hand. "Your mama did the best she could raising you, but she let her own pain color your understanding of what happened. That wasn't fair to you, and in her way, it wasn't fair to Roland either. He still had a choice. Every day for 27 years, he had a choice to pick up the phone to show up to try. You're right, he did. And he chose to send checks instead because that was the only kind of love he knew how to give. His father never showed him anything different. She squeezed my hand. You come from broken people, Genesis. We all do. The question is whether you're going to let that brokenness define you or whether you're going to be the one who finally breaks the cycle. I looked at Soleil still sleeping peacefully against Aunt Ruby's chest. My daughter. The next generation. The one who could grow up differently if I made different choices. I don't know if I can forgive him. Nobody's asking you to forgive him today. Forgiveness ain't something you do once. It's something you choose over and over for yourself more than for them. Aunt Ruby smiled gently. But understanding isn't forgiving. You can understand what happened and still be hurt. You can see his side and still hold him accountable. Both things can be true. He said something to me on the phone. When I called him, he said, "I've been sending you $4,000 every month for 16 years. Is that not enough?" Like that was supposed to mean something? Aunt Ruby shook her head. That man speaks money because he doesn't know how to speak love. It's not an excuse, it's just the truth. His father taught him that providing meant loving, so he provided, and he never learned that presence is worth more than 1,000,000 checks. So what am I supposed to do now? That's up to you, baby, but I'll tell you this much. She carefully handed Soleil back to me. You got a daughter now. That little girl is going to grow up watching how you handle pain, how you deal with people who hurt you, how you let go or hold on. Whatever you decide about Roland, make sure it's a decision you want her to learn from. She stood up and headed to my kitchen to check on the casserole. One more thing, she called over her shoulder. Your mama was wrong to keep some things from you, but she was right about one thing. 16 years of carrying that anger around like armor, it's not protecting you anymore, Genesis. It's just heavy. Maybe it's time to put it down. Not for Roland, for yourself, for that baby. I held Soleil closer and thought about armor and anger and the weight of stories we tell ourselves for decades. Thought about my father standing outside my window crying, wanting to come back but too broken to find his way. Thought about a little girl who grew up believing she wasn't enough to make her father stay. Maybe the story was more complicated than I'd let myself believe. Maybe understanding that was the first step toward freedom. But whatever was coming next, I knew it wouldn't be simple. Camille had warned me about Victoria, about the storm headed my way, about a woman who saw me as a threat to everything she'd built. I'd spent my whole life fighting to prove I didn't need Roland Price. I had a feeling I was about to find out exactly what his world thought of me, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that fight. The doorbell rang 3 days later. Aunt Ruby had gone home the day before, leaving my freezer full of casseroles and my head full of truths I was still trying to process. Soleil and I were finally settling into something resembling a routine. Not a good routine, but a routine. I wasn't expecting anyone. Tanya was at work, my mama couldn't drive, and nobody else knew where I lived except hospital HR and bill collectors. I checked the peephole and my heart stopped. Roland Price was standing in my hallway. Expensive suit, graying hair, tired eyes that I recognized because I'd seen them in my own mirror every day for the past month. Behind him, looking nervous as hell, was Camille. For a long moment, I just stood there. 27 years of anger and hurt and questions all standing on the other side of a 2-inch door. Part of me wanted to pretend I wasn't home. To let him knock until he gave up, let him know what it felt like to reach out and get nothing back. But another part of me, the part that was exhausted from carrying this weight alone, knew I couldn't hide forever. I opened the door. Genesis. His voice cracked on my name. There were actual tears in his eyes. I know I have no right to be here. I know 1,000 checks don't buy me a welcome, but when Camille told me when she said you had a baby, that you almost died, that you're struggling, I couldn't stay away anymore. So you just show up, no call, no warning. Would you have answered if I'd called? Fair point. I probably wouldn't have. Camille said there are things I should know. I looked at my sister, my strange new sister standing behind our father like she was ready to referee. Things that might change how I see everything. There are, Roland swallowed hard. But none of them are excuses. I want you to know that up front. Nothing I say is meant to excuse what I did. I just want you to understand. If you'll let me. Soleil chose that moment to start fussing from inside the apartment. That newborn cry that meant she was hungry and patience wasn't her strong suit. I had a choice. Close the door in their faces and keep my walls intact, or let them in and risk everything I'd built to protect myself. I thought about what Aunt Ruby said, about armor that stops protecting and just becomes heavy, about decisions I'd want my daughter to learn from. "You can come in," I said finally. "You can meet her, but that's all I'm offering right now." The look on Roland's face when he stepped into my apartment was something I'll never forget. His eyes swept over the small living room, the secondhand furniture, the cramped kitchen. This was not the home of a wealthy man's daughter. This was the home of a woman who'd built everything herself, one paycheck at a time. "It's small," I said, defensive despite myself. "But I paid for it. Every dollar came from work I did, not from you." I wasn't judging, and his voice was quiet. "I was thinking about all the years you lived like this, while I had more money than I knew what to do with, all the years you struggled when I could have helped. I didn't want your help. I wanted my father. There's a difference." He flinched like I'd hit him. "Good." Soleil's cries were getting louder. I went to her bassinet and picked her up, cradling her against my chest. When I turned back, Roland was staring at us with an expression I couldn't read. "Can I—" He stopped, cleared his throat, tried again. "Can I hold her?" Every instinct I had screamed no. This man didn't deserve to hold my daughter. He hadn't earned that right. He'd missed every important moment of my life, and now he wanted to swoop in and play grandfather. But Soleil was still fussing, and Camille was watching with hopeful eyes, and somewhere in the back of my mind I heard Aunt Ruby's voice asking what decision I wanted my daughter to learn from. "Support her head," I said carefully, transferring Soleil into his arms. "She likes to be held close." Roland held my daughter like she was made of glass, like she was the most precious thing he'd ever touched. The tears that had been threatening spilled over, running down his face and landing on Soleil's blanket. "She looks like you did," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "When you were born. I was there, you know. I cut the cord. You grabbed my finger and wouldn't let go for an hour. The nurses had to practically pry you off." "I don't remember that." "You were a newborn, but I remember." He looked up at me. "I remember every single detail of that day. It was the happiest day of my life, and I've spent 27 years trying to find my way back to it." "You had a map. It's called showing up. You just chose not to use it." "You're right." He didn't argue, didn't defend himself, just accepted the hit. "I chose wrong. Over and over for 27 years, I chose wrong. I told myself the money was enough, that providing for you was the same as being there for you. I was lying to myself because the truth was too painful." "What truth?" "That I didn't know how to be a father, that my own father never showed me what that looked like, that by the time I realized money couldn't buy what I'd lost, so many years had passed that I didn't know how to come back." He looked down at Soleil, who had stopped fussing and was staring up at him with curious newborn eyes. "I told myself you were better off without me, that you'd built this amazing life on your own, and you didn't need some broken old man showing up to complicate things. So you watched from afar instead, kept a box full of my accomplishments like some kind of creepy scrapbook." Camille spoke up from her spot by the door. "I showed her the box, Dad. She knows about it." Roland closed his eyes for a moment. "I'm not proud of that either. Watching your life from a distance instead of being part of it. But Genesis, you have to understand, that box, those clippings, your graduation announcements, every single thing I could find about you. It was my way of being close to you, of knowing you, even though I'd lost the right to actually know you." "That's not knowing someone, that's stalking." "I know how it looks, but from my side it was the only way I could bear the distance. I kept telling myself one day I'd reach out. One day I'd have the courage to call. One day I'd figure out the right words." His voice broke. "And then one day turned into 27 years, and I realized there were no right words.
Nothing I could say would make up for what I'd done. You're right. Nothing can. I know. He looked at me over Soleil's head. But I'm here now, not because I think I deserve forgiveness, not because I think I can make up for the past. I'm here because my daughter almost died alone and I didn't know about it.
I'm here because I have a granddaughter I've never met. I'm here because I cannot let another generation grow up without knowing me, even if knowing me means knowing all the ways I failed. Pretty words. You know what they say about pretty words? That they mean nothing without action. He nodded. I know, and I know I can't prove anything today. I can't undo the damage with one visit. But I'm asking for a chance. Not to be forgiven. Just a chance to try. To show up now even though I should have shown up 20 years ago. I watched him holding my daughter, this stranger who shared my DNA, this wealthy man in his expensive suit crying in my tiny apartment, begging for something money couldn't buy. Part of me wanted to rip Soleil out of his arms and tell him to get out, to protect her from the same disappointment I'd carried my whole life. But another part of me saw something I hadn't expected to see. Regret. Real devastating, bone-deep regret. This wasn't a man who'd moved on without a second thought. This was a man who'd been carrying his own weight for 27 years. Different from mine, but just as heavy. I have to tell you something, I said slowly. Something you need to hear before we go any further. Roland looked at me, waiting. I spent my entire life trying to prove I didn't need you. Every achievement, every degree, every late night studying while my classmates went to parties, it was all fuel to prove that your absence didn't break me. Genesis, I never wanted you to feel like you had to prove anything. I know, that was my choice, my armor. I took a breath. But here's what I've realized in the past few days. All that proving, all that achieving, all that refusing to need anyone, it wasn't strength, it was fear. I was so scared of being abandoned again that I pushed everyone away before they could leave. Camille made a small sound. When I looked at her, she was crying too. Marcus left me, I continued. The father of my child, a man I let myself love. He left the same way you did, said the same words you did. I'll send money. And I realized something then. I've been choosing men who leave because at least that's a pain I know how to handle. The unknown was too terrifying. Roland's face crumpled. I did that to you. I taught you that. Yeah, you did. I let that land. So here's what I need you to understand. If I let you in, if I give you a chance, and you disappear again, I will never recover. And neither will she. I pointed at Soleil. So before you ask for a chance, you need to be absolutely certain you're ready to stay. Not send checks, not watch from afar. Actually, stay. Actually show up. Actually be present for the hard parts and the boring parts and the messy parts. I'm certain. How can you be certain when you couldn't do it before? He looked down at Soleil again. When he looked back up, something in his eyes had shifted. Because I'm 62 years old. I've spent 40 years building an empire that means nothing when I'm alone at night. I have a wife who sees me as an asset and a son who sees me as competition. The only real thing I've ever done, the only thing that ever mattered was you, and I threw it away because I was too broken to know how to keep it. He stepped forward, still holding my daughter. I'm asking you to let me try to fix what I broke, not because I deserve it, but because Soleil deserves a grandfather who shows up, because you deserved a father who stayed, and because I refuse to die with this regret as my legacy. Heavy words, real words. I didn't know if I believed them yet. Trust takes time to build, and he had 27 years of deficit. But I thought about my mother working 3 jobs, about Aunt Ruby driving 3 hours to make sure I didn't fall apart, about Camille reaching out across a lifetime of enforced separation. Family isn't just the people who are supposed to be there, it's the people who actually show up. You can visit, I said finally. You can get to know her. We can try to get to know each other. I held up a hand before hope could fully bloom on his face. But the first time you prioritize business over being here, the first time you send a check, instead of showing up the first time you disappear without explanation, we're done, forever, no third chances. I understand. I don't think you do yet, but you will. I walked over and carefully took Soleil back from his arms. Now, I need to feed my daughter. You two can wait in the living room. And when I come back, you're going to tell me the truth. All of it. Every ugly detail about why you left what you've been doing for 27 years and why you think now is the time to try to make it right. Okay. And Roland? I met his eyes. If you lie to me even once about anything, I'll know. I'm a doctor. I've spent years learning to tell when people aren't being honest about their symptoms. Don't test me. He nodded. No lies. I promise. I went to my bedroom to feed Soleil, leaving my father and my sister in my living room. This tiny space that had always been my fortress, now occupied by the family I'd spent my whole life running from. Something was changing. I could feel it in my bones. The walls I'd built were cracking, letting in light I wasn't sure I was ready for. But as I settled into the nursing chair and watched my daughter eat, I thought about the choice ahead of me. Stay safe behind my walls, or risk everything to see if something new could grow. I didn't know yet which one I'd choose, but for the first time in 27 years, I was willing to find out. What I didn't know then was that while I was feeding my daughter, while I was starting to let Roland in his wife, was already on a plane to Chicago. Victoria had found out where her husband had gone, and she was coming to make sure this reconciliation never happened. The storm Camille warned me about was closer than any of us knew. After I finished feeding Soleil, I stayed in my bedroom for another 10 minutes, just breathing, just preparing myself for what came next. 27 years of questions, 27 years of pain, 27 years of conversations I'd had a million times in my head, always imagining how strong I'd be, how eloquent, how devastating. Now the moment was here, and I felt like a 7-year-old girl again, pressing her face against the window, wondering why she wasn't enough. When I walked back into the living room, Roland was sitting on my second-hand couch, looking completely out of place. Camille was in the armchair, scrolling nervously through her phone. They both looked up when I entered. "She's asleep," I said, settling Soleil into her bassinet. Then I sat down across from Roland, crossed my arms and waited. "Where do you want me to start?" he asked. "The night you left. I heard the fight. I heard you tell Mama you'd send money. What I didn't hear was the reason. The real reason, not the pretty version." Roland leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "The real reason. Okay." He took a breath. "My mother had just died. 6 weeks before that night. I watched her waste away because I couldn't afford the treatment that might have saved her. I begged my own father for help, and he laughed at me. Aunt Ruby told me that part. Did she tell you what I felt? How I sat by my mother's hospital bed and promised her I would never be helpless again, that I would build something so big, so successful, that no one I loved would ever die because I couldn't afford to save them? That's a noble story, but it doesn't explain leaving your daughter." "No, it doesn't." He looked at his hands. "The truth is I was drowning. Grief, shame, fear, all of it pressing down on me until I couldn't breathe. I looked at you and your mother. I looked at our tiny apartment with the broken radiator and the rent we could barely pay, and I saw my mother dying all over again. I saw you growing up the same way I did, poor, struggling, watching your father fail to provide. So you decided no father at all was better than a poor father. I decided I couldn't be present and build something at the same time. I was wrong. I know that now. But at the time, in my broken state, I convinced myself that if I could just get successful enough, just build a big enough empire, I could come back and give you everything. I could make up for the years I missed. Money doesn't work like that. Time doesn't work like that. You can't deposit years you missed into a trust fund and call it even." "I know." His voice cracked. "God, Genesis, I know. But I didn't know then. I thought success would fix everything. I thought if I just made enough money I could buy back what I'd lost. I let that sit for a moment. Then I started asking the questions that had been burning in me for 27 years. When I turned 8, I had a birthday party. 6 kids from school, a cake Mama made from scratch decorations she paid for with her tip money. I kept looking at the door, waiting for you to walk in. You never came. Where were you?" Roland closed his eyes. "I was in a meeting with investors, the meeting that launched my first successful development deal." When I was 12, I got my period for the first time in the middle of school. I had to go to the nurse's office and call Mama, who had to leave work and risk getting fired. I remember lying on that cot thinking if I had a daddy, he'd come get me. He'd make it okay. Where were you? I was in New York, closing on a property that tripled my net worth. When I was 16, a boy at school spread rumors about me, said I slept with him when I hadn't, said nasty things that made other kids look at me different. I cried in my room for a week. Mama didn't know what to say. I needed my father to tell me I was worth more than what some stupid boy said. Where were you? I was celebrating breaking the $50 million mark in assets. His voice was hollow. I remember that week. I bought Victoria a diamond necklace. I bought myself a new Mercedes. I didn't know my daughter was crying herself to sleep. When I got into college on a full scholarship, Mama called everyone she knew to share the good news. Did she call you? Did you even know? She called. She left a message. I didn't call back. He met my eyes. I was ashamed that I'd missed 17 years. Ashamed that I didn't know how to be proud of you without facing what I'd thrown away. So I sent a check instead. When I got into medical school, when I graduated, when I matched for residency, where were you for any of it? Nowhere. I was nowhere that mattered. Tears were streaming down his face now. I watched from afar. I collected newspaper articles and printouts. I told myself I was proud of you. But I was too much of a coward to show up and actually say it. And when Marcus left me, when I found out I was pregnant and alone, when I almost bled to death in a hospital, you want to know where I wished you were? Where? Anywhere. I wished you were anywhere in my life at all. Not because I needed your money, because I needed someone to tell me I wasn't alone, someone to hold my hand and say it would be okay, someone to meet my daughter and tell me I was going to be a good mother, even though I was terrified. I was crying now, too. All the armor I'd built, all the walls I'd constructed, crumbling under the weight of truths I'd carried too long. Instead, I called you at 2 a.m, desperate and broken, and you asked me if $4,000 a month wasn't enough, like I was complaining about the size of my allowance, like I was just another bill you needed to pay. Roland dropped his head into his hands. His shoulders shook with sobs. Camille was crying quietly in her chair, watching the carnage of our family's wounds finally exposed. I'm sorry. Roland's voice was muffled by his hands. I'm so sorry. Those words on that phone call, I heard them come out of my mouth and I hated myself. I knew they were wrong the second I said them. I've thought about nothing else for the past 4 days. Then why did you say them? He looked up at me, face ravaged by tears. Because I didn't know what else to say. Because I'd spent so long believing money was how I showed love, that when you finally called, finally reached out after all those years, I panicked. I defaulted to the only language I knew. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. He straightened up, wiping his face. But it's the truth. I'm not good at this, Genesis. I never learned how to be a father. My own father was a monster who told me I was worthless every chance he got. I had no model for what a good dad looks like. All I knew was work hard, make money, provide. So you repeated the cycle. Abandoned your daughter just like your father emotionally abandoned you. Yes. The word came out like a confession. And I've spent 27 years building walls to avoid facing that truth. Telling myself I was different because I sent checks. Telling myself you were better off without me. Telling myself you didn't need me, didn't want me, had moved on. I didn't move on. I built my entire personality around proving you wrong. Every achievement was a middle finger to the man who left. Do you understand that you shaped my whole life, just not in the way a father should? I know. And I hate myself for it. We sat in heavy silence for a long moment. Soleil stirred in her bassinet, but didn't wake. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said finally. I'm not there yet. I may never be there. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Then what are you asking for? Roland looked at Soleil, then back at me. A chance to be different. A chance to show up, not with money, but with time, with presence, with all the things I should have given you and didn't. He leaned forward. I know I can't make up for the past. 27 years of absence can't be erased, but maybe I can be here for the next 27. Maybe I can be the grandfather I failed to be as a father.
And what about your wife, your other children, your perfect life that has no room for your first daughter? My wife and I are having problems. Have been for years. Our marriage was always more business than love. He glanced at Camille. My son sees me as an ATM. My daughter is the only one who's ever challenged me, ever told me the truth, ever seemed to want more than my money. So you're willing to blow up your whole life for a reconciliation that might not even work. I'm willing to finally be honest about what matters. He stood up, pacing my small living room. I have $45 million, properties all over the country, a wife who spends more time redecorating than talking to me, a son who can't wait for me to die so he can inherit everything, and none of it means anything. None of it fills the hole where my family should be. He turned to face me. You're right that money doesn't fix things. But here's what I've learned. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy options. It can buy time. It can buy the freedom to finally stop chasing success and start repairing the damage. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying I want to be here, really here, not sending checks from a distance. I want to help with Soleil not by hiring a nanny, but by actually being present. I want to learn who you are not from newspaper clippings, but from actual conversations. I want to try to be the father I should have been, even though I know it's 27 years too late. Camille spoke up for the first time in a while. He means it, Genesis. I've never seen him like this. He's been a different person since your phone call. He barely slept. He barely ate. He just kept saying he had to make it right. Making it right isn't that simple. I know, Roland said, but simple was never going to fix this. Only hard will. And I'm willing to do hard, for as long as it takes. I looked at this man, my father, a stranger and a ghost, and a wound all wrapped in an expensive suit. Did I believe him? Not entirely. Trust like that takes years to build. But did I want to try? Did I want Soleil to have a grandfather who was actually present? Did I want to see if the man who'd failed me could somehow learn to be different? Here's what I can offer, I said slowly. You can visit. Regular visits. Not scheduled by your assistant, not squeezed between business calls. Real time where you're actually here and present. Done. You don't send checks anymore. Not to me, not for Soleil. If you want to help you show up in person, you hold the baby while I sleep. You make a meal. You do the work. Done. And this trust fund Camille told me about, the money from the uncashed checks. I don't want it. Roland started to protest, but I held up my hand. I didn't say I won't ever want it. I said I don't want it right now, because if I take it now, it's too easy for both of us to fall back into old patterns. You throwing money at problems, me feeling like a charity case. If there's going to be a relationship here, it has to be built on something other than financial transactions. So what do I do with it? Leave it where it is. If things work out, if you actually manage to be present for the next few years, maybe we'll talk about using it for Soleil's education. But that's years away. Right now, I need something your money can't buy. What's that? Time. Consistency. Showing up when it's hard and boring and there's nothing in it for you except being a father. I met his eyes. Can you do that? Not because it makes you feel better about yourself, but because it's what family does. I can try. Trying isn't enough. You have to actually do it. Then I will. He said it with a certainty I hadn't expected. I've spent 27 years building things, companies, portfolios, empires. None of it means anything compared to this. If you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life building something that actually matters. A relationship with my daughter, a bond with my granddaughter, a family that isn't held together by money, but by actual love. Big words. Beautiful words. Words I'd needed to hear for 27 years. I still didn't fully believe them, but I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. Okay, I said. We start tomorrow. You can come over in the morning and help with Soleil while I try to sleep for more than 2 hours at a time. No assistant, no driver, just you. I'll be here. And Roland, if you don't show up, don't bother calling with an excuse. Just stay gone. I'll be here. He moved toward the door, then stopped and looked back at me. Genesis, I know I don't have the right to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway because I've wasted 27 years not saying it. He swallowed hard. I'm proud of you. Not because you're a doctor, not because you put yourself through school without my help, not because you've achieved things most people only dream of. I'm proud of you because you survived what I did to you and you came out the other side stronger. You're a better person than I ever was. And that has nothing to do with me and everything to do with who you chose to become." I couldn't respond. My throat had closed up completely. He nodded once, understanding, and walked out with Camille. I stood in my empty apartment surrounded by silence and let myself feel everything I'd been pushing down for 27 years. The rage, the hurt, the longing, the hope, all of it crashing over me in waves. Maybe this would work. Maybe he'd actually change. Or maybe he'd disappear again and I'd have to rebuild my walls even higher than before. But for the first time in my life, I was willing to take the risk. What I didn't know as I stood there crying in my living room was that less than 24 hours later, Victoria Price would be standing in that same spot, and she would not be offering apologies or asking for chances. She would be coming to destroy everything before it could even begin. The peaceful moment I was having. It was the calm before a hurricane, and I had no idea just how bad that storm was going to be. Roland kept his promise. He showed up the next morning at 7. No assistant, no driver, just him in jeans and a polo shirt, looking more human than I'd ever seen him. He held Soleil while I slept for 4 straight hours. When I woke up, he'd also done the dishes, folded a basket of laundry, and was walking circles around my living room, bouncing my daughter gently while humming some old song I didn't recognize. For 3 days it was like that. He came every morning, stayed until evening. He learned how to change diapers, how to burp a newborn, how to tell the difference between a hungry cry and a tired cry. He didn't complain. He didn't check his phone constantly. He was just present. I started to believe maybe people could change. Maybe it wasn't too late. Then Victoria arrived. It was day 4. Roland had gone back to his hotel to shower and change, promising to return in a few hours. Camille was at a coffee shop working remotely, giving me some alone time with Soleil. The knock on my door was sharp, demanding. Nothing like Roland's tentative tap or Camille's gentle rhythm. I opened the door and came face to face with a woman I'd only ever seen in photographs. Victoria Price. 60 years old, but fighting it with every weapon money could buy. Blonde hair perfectly styled, designer clothes that cost more than my monthly rent, eyes that looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. Behind her stood a young man who looked like a younger, softer version of Roland. Roland Jr., my half-brother, the one who'd gotten the father I was denied. "So, you're the charity case." Victoria's voice was ice. "I expected something more impressive given how much money Roland has wasted on you over the years." "Excuse me, don't play innocent with me." She pushed past me into my apartment without being invited. Roland Jr. followed, looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. "I know exactly what you're doing. Roland told me everything. The baby, the sob story, the reconciliation attempt. Very clever. You waited until you were desperate enough to seem sympathetic." "I didn't invite you in." "And I don't care." She turned in a slow circle, taking in my small apartment with obvious disdain. "This is where you live. This is what you've achieved after all those years of refusing Roland's money. You should have cashed the check, sweetheart. At least then you'd have something to show for your pride. Get out of my home. Not until we have an understanding." Victoria moved closer, her perfume overwhelming in my small space. "I've spent 30 years building a life with Roland. I've stood by him through every deal, every setback, every success. I've raised his children, managed his household, protected his reputation. And I will not let some illegitimate daughter with a newborn prop waltz in and destroy everything I've built. Illegitimate." The word hit like a slap. My parents were together for 8 years. They were going to get married before he left. There's nothing illegitimate about me. There is in every way that matters. Victoria's smile was cruel. "You're not in the will. You're not part of the family business. You're not recognized by anyone who matters in Roland's life. You're just a regret he's been trying to pay off for decades." Those checks weren't payoffs. They were guilt money, and I never cashed a single one. "Yes, I know about your little pride project," she waved dismissively. "Very noble,
Very stupid. Do you have any idea how much money you've thrown away? It wasn't mine to throw away. It was his attempt to buy off his conscience without actually being a father." Victoria laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. "Is that what you tell yourself, that you're too good for his money? Let me tell you something, little girl. Money is the only thing that matters. Money is power. Money is security. Money is the difference between this shoebox you call a home and the mansion where my children grew up. Your children grew up with money. They didn't grow up with a father. Roland told me himself. He missed every recital, every graduation, every important moment, just like he missed mine. The difference is, I didn't have the money to distract me from the absence." Something flickered in Victoria's eyes. A crack in the armor quickly sealed. That's his version of events. The guilty man rewriting history to make himself feel better about his midlife crisis. Is that what you think this is, a midlife crisis? I think this is a 62-year-old man having a breakdown because he's finally realized money doesn't buy happiness, and I think you're taking advantage of that breakdown to get your hands on his fortune. I laughed. Actually laughed. The audacity of this woman coming into my home and accusing me of being a gold digger. Lady, I've spent my entire adult life refusing your husband's money. I put myself through medical school. I paid off $180,000 of student loans with my own paychecks. I live in this apartment because I earned it. I didn't call Roland because I wanted his fortune. I called him because I was desperate and alone, and for one weak moment I thought maybe my father could be a father. Touching story. I don't believe a word of it. I don't care what you believe. I moved to my door and opened it. Get out, now, before I call the police. Victoria didn't move. If you think I'm going to let you destroy my family, you're delusional. Roland will come to his senses. He always does. And when he does, you'll be right back where you started, alone with your pride and your poverty and your fatherless child. At least my child will know she's loved for who she is, not what she inherits. That landed. I could see it in the way Victoria's jaw tightened. You want to talk about what children know? Victoria stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. Let me tell you what your precious half-sister knows. She knows that her father lights up when he talks about you. The daughter he abandoned. She knows he keeps a box of your achievements hidden in his study like some kind of shrine. She knows that no matter how hard she tries, no matter how many degrees she earns or accomplishments she achieves, she will never matter to Roland the way you do. That's not my fault. No, it's Roland's fault, but you're benefiting from it. You're walking in after 27 years of absence and claiming the love that my children earned through presence. That's not fair. Fair? I felt my own anger rising now. You want to talk about fair? I didn't choose to be abandoned. I didn't choose to spend my childhood wondering why my father didn't love me. I didn't choose to build my entire personality around proving I didn't need a man who should have been there. None of this is fair. It never was. Roland Jr. finally spoke. Maybe we should go, Mom. This isn't accomplishing anything. Quiet. Victoria didn't even look at him. I'm not finished. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a folder. I had my lawyers do some research. Interesting things I found. Your baby's father, Marcus Thompson, is doing quite well in Seattle, senior partner at his firm, pulling in 7 figures easily, and here you are struggling to pay rent. My blood went cold. What does Marcus have to do with anything? He abandoned you too, didn't he? Left you pregnant and alone just like Roland left your mother. You seem to attract men who leave. Victoria smiled like a shark. What do you think Marcus would say if he found out you're trying to reconcile with your wealthy father? Do you think he'd suddenly be interested in his daughter if he knew there was money in the picture? You wouldn't. I would do anything to protect my family. Anything. She dropped the folder on my coffee table. That's a copy of my lawyer's report, just so you know how much I already know. There's also a draft of a very interesting letter that could be sent to Marcus's firm, explaining that he abandoned his pregnant girlfriend, that he's a deadbeat father dodging his responsibilities. I imagine that wouldn't look good for a senior partner at a prestigious law firm. That's blackmail. That's motivation. Victoria smoothed her jacket. Here's my offer. You disappear.
You tell Roland that you've changed your mind, that you don't want a relationship, that he should go back to his life, and forget about this reconciliation nonsense.
In exchange, I don't destroy Marcus Thompson's career, and I don't make your life significantly more difficult than it already is. You're threatening me in my own home with my newborn daughter in the next room. I'm offering you a choice, a simple one. Walk away, or face consequences you can't even imagine. I have resources you will never have. I have lawyers, accountants, private investigators. I can make your life very uncomfortable, Genesis. Or I can let you go back to your quiet, poor, insignificant existence. Your choice. I stood there shaking with rage and fear, and something else I couldn't name. This woman was everything I'd ever feared about Roland's other life. Cold, calculating, willing to destroy anyone who threatened her position. And she had power, real power, the kind that money buys. "Get out!" My voice was steadier than I felt. "Get out of my apartment right now." Victoria shrugged elegantly. "Think about my offer. You have 48 hours. After that, things get unpleasant." She walked past me toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Genesis, don't bother telling Roland about this conversation. He's known me for 30 years. Who do you think he'll believe? His devoted wife or the daughter who wouldn't even cash his checks?" She left. Roland Jr. followed, throwing me an apologetic look over his shoulder that meant nothing. I closed the door, locked it, and collapsed against it, sliding down to the floor. Soleil started crying from the bedroom, hungry again, needing me again. I wanted to cry too. I wanted to scream and throw things and give up. But I had a daughter who needed me, and I had spent my entire life refusing to let people who should have loved me destroy me. Victoria Price thought she could threaten me into silence. She thought her money and her lawyers and her power made her untouchable. She didn't know who she was dealing with. I got up from that floor, I fed my daughter, and I started making phone calls. If Victoria wanted a war, she was going to get one, but I wasn't going to fight it alone. Not anymore. The first call I made was to Camille. "Your mother was just here." I didn't bother with pleasantries. "She threatened to destroy my life if I don't walk away from Roland." Silence on the other end. Then, "Oh God, Genesis, I'm so sorry. I should have warned you she was coming. I saw her text Roland Jr. this morning, but I didn't think she'd actually show up at your apartment. She has a folder on me, on Marcus. She's threatening to expose him as a deadbeat dad to his firm if I don't disappear." That sounds exactly like something she'd do. Camille's voice was bitter. "She's done it before. Anyone who threatened her position, she destroyed them. Business rivals, women she thought Roland was too friendly with, even family members who questioned her. How does Roland not see this? He sees it. He just never cared enough to stop it. It didn't affect him directly, so he let her handle things her way." A pause. "But this is different. This is about you, about Soleil. If we tell him what she did, he'll have to choose. And what if he chooses her? What if 30 years of marriage outweighs 4 days of trying to be a father? Then at least you'll know the truth, and you can stop hoping for something that was never going to happen. She was right. I hated that she was right." "There's something else," I said. "She told me not to tell Roland, said he wouldn't believe me over his devoted wife. She's counting on you being scared, on you staying quiet because that's what victims do." Camille's voice hardened. "But you're not a victim, Genesis. You're a doctor who put herself through medical school. You're a mother who almost died bringing her daughter into this world. You're a survivor, and survivors don't stay quiet." I felt something shift in my chest. She was right about that, too. "I'm not going to hide this," I said, "but I need to be smart about it. If I just tell Roland, it becomes my word against hers. I need proof." The folder she left. "Does it have anything incriminating?" I looked at the folder still sitting on my coffee table. "I don't know. I haven't looked at it yet." "Look at it. Document everything. And Genesis. Don't be alone when Roland comes back. Have someone there as a witness, someone she can't dismiss or threaten." After we hung up, I called Tanya. "I need you to come over. Right now, if you can. Something happened and I need a witness." Tanya didn't ask questions. "I'm on break in 20 minutes. I'll be there." Then I called Aunt Ruby. That woman showed up at my apartment and threatened me. I told her everything. The threats, the blackmail, the 48-hour ultimatum. Aunt Ruby was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. Good. Good. She's trying to destroy me. She's trying. But baby, do you know what this means? It means she's scared. She's scared of you, of what you represent, of what might happen if Roland actually chooses to be your father. I could hear Aunt Ruby's smile through the phone. Scared people make mistakes, and that woman just made a big one by coming at you directly. How is threatening me a mistake? Because now you know who she really is. Before she was just Roland's wife, some woman who kept him away from you. Now you know she's a snake who will do anything to protect her territory. That's valuable information. She has lawyers, money, power. What do I have? You have the truth. You have a story that any jury, any journalist, any person with a heart would be moved by. And baby, you have something else too. You have Roland's guilt. That man has been carrying 27 years of regret. You think he's going to let his wife threaten his chance at redemption. Not if he's really trying to change. What if he's not really trying? What if this was all just a phase like Victoria said? Then you'll find out. But Genesis, hear me on this. You cannot spend your life afraid of what might happen. You've already done that. For 27 years, you've been so scared of being hurt again that you pushed everyone away. Look where that got you. Alone in an apartment with a newborn barely surviving. That hit hard. But it was true. So what do? You do what you've always done when your back is against the wall. You fight. Not with lawyers and money because you don't have those. You fight with truth, with courage, with the moral high ground that woman will never be able to claim. By the time Tanya arrived, I had looked through Victoria's folder. It was thorough. Private investigators had tracked down Marcus's new address, his firm, his salary, his relationship status. They'd also dug into my finances, my medical records, my social media. Everything was there. But there was also something Victoria probably didn't mean to include. Photocopies of emails. Correspondence between her and someone named Dr. Harrison about psychological evaluations for custody disputes. She's building a case, Tanya said, reading over my shoulder. She's preparing to argue that you're unfit, that having a relationship with you and Soleil would be detrimental to Roland's mental health or some nonsense like that. Can she do that? She can try. Rich people try all kinds of things when they're protecting their assets. Tanya looked at me seriously. Genesis, this woman isn't playing games. She's preparing for war. You need to be prepared too. I'm a first-year attending with no savings and a newborn. How am I supposed to fight a woman with $45 million? By not fighting alone. Tanya pulled out her phone. My cousin Denise is a family law attorney, graduated top of her class at Howard. She does a lot of pro bono work for women in difficult custody situations. I'm calling her right now. An hour later, I had 3 people in my tiny apartment. Tanya, her cousin Denise, who had driven straight over when she heard the situation, and Dr. Evelyn Okafor, my mentor from the hospital, who Tanya had also called. This is what we call a paper trail problem, Denise said, flipping through Victoria's folder. She's got documentation. We need documentation too. Every interaction you've had with Roland since he showed up needs to be written down with dates and times. Every promise he's made, every moment he's been present. We're building a counter-narrative. What about her threats? Is that admissible? Unfortunately, it's your word against hers unless you have a recording. But the fact that she came to your apartment, that she left this folder, that she admitted to having you investigated, that all paints a picture. Denise made notes. Did Roland Jr. say anything? He just stood there. He looked uncomfortable, but he didn't stop her. So he's a witness. Unwilling, but a witness. More notes. The blackmail angle is interesting. She threatened to harm Marcus Thompson's career if you didn't comply. That's extortion. It's illegal. But how do I prove it? Right now you can't. But if she follows through, if she actually sends anything to Marcus's firm, that becomes evidence. Denise looked at me directly. Here's what I need you to understand. This woman has money, but money doesn't guarantee victory. Judges have seen this before. Wealthy people trying to bully their way through family disputes. It doesn't always work, especially when the other side has a compelling story. Dr. Okafor spoke up. Genesis, as your mentor and your friend, I want you to know that the hospital will support you. Whatever you need. Time off documentation of your medical emergency character references. You've spent years proving yourself as a dedicated physician. That matters. I looked around at these women. My friend, my mentor, a lawyer I just met who was willing to take my case for free. None of them were family. None of them owed me anything. But they showed up anyway. This is what real support looks like, I thought. Not checks in the mail. Actual people in the room ready to fight beside you. There's one more thing, I said. Roland is going to be here in an hour. He doesn't know any of this happened. I have to tell him, and I have to see how he reacts. Do you want us to stay? Tanya asked. Yes. If he's really choosing me, he'll understand why I need witnesses. And if he's not, I took a breath. If he's not, then I need you here when I fall apart. Roland arrived right on time. He walked in with a smile that faded immediately when he saw the 3 other women in my apartment. Genesis, what's going on? Is Soleil okay? Soleil is fine. Sit down, Roland. We need to talk about your wife. I watched his face as I told him everything. The unannounced visit, the insults about my apartment, my life, my choices, the threats about Marcus, the folder full of investigative reports, the 48-hour ultimatum. Roland's expression shifted through several stages: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, something that looked like shame. She came here, he said quietly. She came here while I was gone and threatened my daughter. She did. And you thought I wouldn't believe you. You thought you needed witnesses to prove she'd do something like this. Given that I've known you for 4 days and she's been your wife for 30 years, yes, I thought there was a chance you'd choose her version of events. Roland stood up abruptly. He walked to my window and stood there for a long moment, staring out at nothing. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, he said finally. Leaving you and your mother was the biggest. But letting Victoria become who she's become, letting her control everything while I buried myself in work, that's a close second. He turned to face the room. I knew she was ruthless. I knew she protected our family with an intensity that sometimes crossed lines. But I told myself it was for the best. I told myself she was keeping things running so I could focus on building the business. I used her as an excuse to avoid the hard parts of family life. And now, I asked, and now my wife just threatened my daughter and my granddaughter in an attempt to preserve her position. Now I have to face the fact that the family I built with her is not a family at all. It's a business arrangement, and I've been hiding from that truth for 30 years. What are you going to do about it? Roland's jaw tightened. I'm going to divorce her. The room went silent. I'm not saying that to win you over, he continued. I'm not saying it because I think it'll make up for 27 years. I'm saying it because I should have done it years ago. Victoria and I haven't been a real marriage in decades. We've been partners in a business called Maintaining Appearances, and I'm done. She won't let you go easily, Denise said. A woman like that with her resources and her temperament, she'll fight you for everything. Let her fight. She can have the money, she can have the properties, she can have everything except my freedom and my relationship with my daughters. Roland looked at me then at his phone where I knew he had Camille's contact saved. Both of my daughters. This is a big decision, I said carefully. Are you sure you're not just reacting to the drama, that you won't change your mind in a week when things calm down? I've never been more sure of anything. He sat back down closer to me this time. When Camille called me and told me you'd reached out, something broke open in me that I've been keeping sealed for decades. All those years of convincing myself that money was enough, that distance was manageable, that someday I'd figure out how to come back. They were lies, I told myself, because the truth was too painful. What's the truth? The truth is that I abandoned my firstborn child, and I've spent 27 years too scared to face what I did. The truth is that my marriage has been empty for years, and I stayed because leaving felt too hard. The truth is that I've been a coward, Genesis. A rich, successful coward who chose comfort over courage at every turn. He reached out and took my hand. I let him. I can't change the past, but I can stop being a coward right now. Today, I can choose my daughters over my wife's threats. I can choose being present over being comfortable. I can choose to fight for this chance you're giving me instead of running away like I did before. I looked at this man, my father, still a stranger in so many ways, still someone I wasn't sure I could trust. But he was here. He was choosing me. He was willing to burn down his comfortable life to prove he meant what he said. That had to count for something. Okay, I said. Okay, we fight this together. But Roland, I need you to understand something. If you change your mind, if you go back to her, if you disappear again, I will never give you another chance. This is it, the last chance. Do you understand? I understand. Then let's figure out how to survive your wife's war. The next 48 hours moved fast. Roland moved out of his hotel and into a different one Victoria didn't know about. He called his personal lawyer, a man he'd worked with for 20 years, and started divorce proceedings. He froze joint accounts before Victoria could drain them. He was, for the first time in our relationship, actually doing something instead of just promising. Camille flew back to be with us. She showed up at my apartment with a suitcase and a look of grim determination. Mom called me 16 times, she said. Left voicemails threatening to cut me off if I didn't tell her where Dad was staying. I didn't answer any of them. She'll come for you too. You know that, right? Let her. Camille set down her bag. I've spent my whole life trying to earn her approval. You know what I got criticism. Nothing was ever good enough. My grades, my appearance, my career choices, everything I did was measured against some impossible standard she kept moving. So why did you keep trying? Because she's my mother. Because I thought if I just achieved enough, worked hard enough, became successful enough, she'd finally see me. Finally love me the way I needed to be loved. Camille laughed bitterly. Sound familiar? Yeah, it sounded painfully familiar. We're quite a pair, I said, both of us spending our lives trying to earn love from parents who didn't know how to give it. At least Dad is trying now. Mom never will. Camille looked at me seriously. You know she's going to show up here again. When she realizes Dad isn't backing down, she's going to escalate. I know. That's why Denise is preparing a restraining order, just in case. A restraining order against Victoria Price. Camille shook her head. 6 months ago, I would have said that was impossible, that she was untouchable, that she always won. What changed? You did. Camille smiled slightly. You showed me that you can survive without their money, without their approval, without any of it. You built a whole life, became a doctor, had a baby all without taking a single dollar from the man who owed you everything. That's not nothing, Genesis. That's proof that we don't need them to be okay. Victoria showed up on day 3. She didn't knock this time. She just started pounding on my door, screaming loud enough for the whole building to hear. I know you're in there. I know Roland is there too. Open this door right now. I looked at Roland, who had gone pale. Then at Camille, who looked scared, but resolute. Then at Denise, who was already on the phone with the police. Don't open it, Denise said. Let her make a scene. Let her be the one acting unhinged. It'll help our case. But Roland stood up. No, I've been hiding from this for too long. It ends now. He walked to the door and opened it. Victoria stumbled forward, clearly not expecting him to actually be there. She was disheveled, hair not perfectly styled, makeup slightly smudged. She looked like a woman who hadn't slept in days. Roland. Her voice shifted from screaming to pleading in an instant. What are you doing? Come home. We can work this out. You're having some kind of breakdown and I can help you. I'm not having a breakdown, Victoria. I'm having an awakening. Something that should have happened years ago. This girl is manipulating you. Can't you see that she's been planning this for years, waiting until you were vulnerable enough to exploit? Genesis didn't contact me in 16 years. I'm the one who sent checks she never cashed. I'm the one who watched from afar instead of being present. She didn't pursue me. I failed her. Victoria pushed past him into the apartment. Her eyes swept over Camille with fury, over Denise with suspicion, and finally landed on me with pure hatred. "You!" She stalked toward me. "You did this! You destroyed my family!" I stood my ground. "Your family was destroyed long before I entered the picture. I just gave Roland a reason to finally admit it. You think you've won? You think he's going to choose you over 30 years of marriage, over his legacy, over everything we've built together? I don't think anything. I'm just standing here in my own home with my daughter waiting to see what he does." Victoria spun back to Roland. "Think about what you're doing. The company, the properties, the reputation we've spent decades building. Do you want to throw all of that away for some woman who wouldn't even take your money?" "That's exactly why I trust her." Roland's voice was steady. "She didn't want my money. She wanted me, my presence, my time. Something you never actually wanted, Victoria. You wanted the lifestyle, the status, the power that came with being Mrs. Roland Price. You never wanted the actual man." "That's not true. I've supported you for 30 years. You've managed me for 30 years. There's a difference." He moved to stand beside me and Camille. "I'm done being managed. I'm done with a marriage that's nothing but a business arrangement. And I'm done choosing money over family." Victoria's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this. I'll take you for everything. My lawyers will destroy you in court. You'll lose half of everything you've built." "Half of everything?" Roland nodded slowly. $45 million divided by 2, $22.5 million. That's what this marriage cost me. Seems cheap, honestly, compared to what I paid for abandoning Genesis. "You're insane. You've completely lost your mind." "No. I've finally found it." He took a breath. "Victoria, I want a divorce. I've already started the paperwork. You can fight it or you can accept it, but it's happening either way. I will fight you. I will fight both of you, and I will win." Denise stepped forward. "Actually, Mrs. Price, I'd advise against that. I have documented evidence that you came to this apartment 3 days ago and threatened my client with blackmail. You specifically mentioned destroying Marcus Thompson's career if Genesis didn't disappear. That's extortion, which is a criminal offense." Victoria went pale. "That's ridiculous. I never said any such thing. You left a folder of investigative reports, including emails discussing psychological evaluations for custody disputes, evidence of your intentions to manufacture a case against your husband's daughter. Those were for research purposes only. A judge will decide what they were for." Denise handed Victoria a document. "This is a restraining order approved by a family court judge 1 hour ago. You are required to stay 500 feet away from Genesis Price, her daughter Soleil, and this residence. Any violation will result in immediate arrest." Victoria stared at the paper like it might bite her. "This is absurd. You can't do this. It's already done." I spoke up for the first time. "You came into my home and threatened me. You tried to blackmail me into giving up my father. And now you're facing the consequences." "Your father?" Victoria laughed, but it sounded unhinged. "He was never your father. He was just a man who felt guilty and wrote checks. That's all you ever were to him, a line item on his conscience." "Maybe that's all I was, but it's more than you ever were." I stepped closer to her. "You were a business partner, a social asset, a manager of his public image, but you were never his partner. You were never his love, and you definitely weren't his family. I was his wife for 30 years. And he's choosing me after 3 days. What does that tell you about those 30 years?" Victoria's composure finally cracked completely. She lunged at me, hands reaching for my throat, but she never got there. Roland grabbed her. Camille jumped between us, and Denise was already calling 911. "Get off me!" Victoria screamed, struggling against Roland's grip. "Let me go. She deserves to pay for what she's done." "You're the one who's going to pay." Roland's voice was cold now. All the warmth he'd shown me, all the tenderness with Soleil, none of it was there anymore. This was the ruthless businessman who'd built an empire. "You just assaulted my daughter in front of witnesses. Your restraining order violation alone would have gotten you arrested. Now you're looking at assault charges, too. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Victoria stopped struggling. The fight went out of her all at once, leaving behind a shell of a woman who'd just realized she'd lost everything. "I gave you everything," she whispered to Roland. "I gave you the best years of my life." "No, you gave me an arrangement. I gave you my soul, and neither of us got what we actually needed." The police arrived. They took Victoria's statement, then mine, then everyone else's. When they asked if I wanted to press charges, I looked at Roland. He nodded slightly. "It's your choice, but she needs to face consequences. She's never had to face consequences before." I thought about it. Thought about mercy and revenge, and what kind of example I wanted to set for Soleil. "Yes," I said finally. "I want to press charges, not for revenge, but because people who threaten and assault others shouldn't be allowed to get away with it just because they're rich." They took Victoria away in handcuffs. The last image I have of her is through my apartment window. She was being led to a police car, looking back at the building where her whole world had collapsed. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel satisfaction. I just felt tired. So incredibly tired. Roland stood beside me at the window. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I'm sorry for all of this, for bringing this chaos into your life. You didn't bring her, she brought herself. But she was my wife. My responsibility. I should have dealt with her years ago instead of ignoring the problem. You're dealing with it now. That's what matters." He turned to look at me. "Is it, though, is any of this what you wanted? Drama and police and restraining orders? You just wanted your father, and instead you got a whole mess." I thought about that, about what I'd wanted when I made that desperate phone call at 2 a.m. "I wanted to know if you could be different," I said slowly. "I wanted to know if you could choose me, really choose me when it was hard, when it cost you something. And now I know." I met his eyes. "You chose me, even when it meant losing everything else. That's more than I ever let myself hope for. I should have chosen you 27 years ago." "Yeah, you should have." I didn't sugarcoat it. "But you're here now, and despite everything that just happened, despite Victoria and the police and all of it, I'm glad you're here." Roland pulled me into a hug, the first hug he'd ever given me. 62 years old, and I was finally being held by my father. I cried. He cried. Camille cried, watching us. Soleil slept through the whole thing, completely unbothered by the drama that had just shattered and reformed our family. Maybe that's a sign, I thought. Maybe it means the storm is over, and now we can finally start building something new, something real, something that money could never buy. The weeks after Victoria's arrest moved slowly, like we were all recovering from a fever. Roland's divorce proceedings moved forward. Victoria fought every step just like she'd promised, but without the element of surprise and with assault charges pending, her leverage was significantly diminished. The prenuptial agreement she'd insisted on 30 years ago, designed to protect her family's wealth from Roland, now protected Roland from her. Irony is a strange thing. Roland moved into a modest apartment near mine, not the luxury penthouse he could have afforded. A simple 2-bedroom in a regular building with regular people. When I asked him why, he said, "I've spent 30 years surrounded by luxury and feeling empty. I'd rather spend the next 30 in a normal apartment and feel full." He was there every morning. Not sometimes. Not when it was convenient. Every single morning he showed up at my door to help with Soleil. Changed diapers, made breakfast while I pumped, walked endless circles around my living room with a fussy baby while I finally caught up on sleep. I kept waiting for him to get tired of it, to slip back into old patterns, to find excuses not to come. He never did. Camille became a permanent fixture in my life, too. She transferred to a Chicago office of her company, gave up her New York apartment, and started building a real relationship with the sister she'd always wanted. We had dinner together every Sunday. We went shopping for baby clothes. We talked for hours about our shared father wounds and our different paths through them. Roland Jr. was the surprise. 2 months after Victoria's arrest, he showed up at my door looking like a man who'd had his entire worldview shattered. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear I didn't know how bad she was. I knew she was controlling, but the threats, the blackmail trying to attack you.
I never thought she'd go that far. You were there when she threatened me the first time.
You didn't stop her.
I know. I was too scared. I'd been trained my whole life to just go along with whatever she wanted, to not make waves. He looked at his shoes. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. So why are you here now? Because I have a niece I've never met. Because I have a sister I've never known. Because I spent my whole life thinking I was the golden child, and it turns out I was just the one who never questioned anything. He looked up at me. I want to do better. I don't know how, but I want to try. I thought about sending him away, about protecting myself from another disappointment. But then I thought about Soleil and the family I wanted her to have. The big, complicated, imperfect family that would show her what it means to forgive, to grow, to try again, even when it's hard. You can meet her, I said. But if you ever take your mother's side against us, you're gone. No second chances. Fair enough. My mother came to visit when Soleil was 3 months old. I watched her face when she walked into my apartment and saw Roland sitting on the couch, holding her granddaughter. She stopped in the doorway, froze. 27 years of anger and hurt crossing her features in waves. Lorraine. Roland stood up carefully, still holding Soleil. I am so sorry. For everything. For leaving you to raise her alone. For not being man enough to face what I'd done. For letting money become an excuse, instead of doing the hard work of showing up. My mother said nothing for a long moment. Then she walked over, took Soleil from his arms, and looked up at him. You have a lot to make up for. I know. More than you know. I know that too. She studied his face, looking for something. I don't know if she found it. I'm not ready to forgive you, she said finally. Maybe I never will be. But I'm too old to carry this anger anymore. So we'll see. Day by day. We'll see. It wasn't a warm welcome, but it was an opening. And openings are where light gets in. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. I'd finished my residency and started as a full attending physician. Dr. Genesis Price, OB-GYN. I had business cards and everything. My mother cried when she saw them. Soleil was sitting up on her own, laughing at everything, reaching for everyone who came near her. She had 4 grandparents, now counting Mama and Aunt Ruby. 5 if you counted Dr. Okafor, who had essentially adopted us both. A whole village of people who loved her. Roland was there for every milestone. First smile, first time sitting up, first solid food. He took more photos than a professional photographer, showed them to anyone who would look, bragged about his granddaughter to strangers in coffee shops. You're obsessed, I told him once. I'm making up for lost time, he said. I missed all of this with you. I'm not missing any of it with her. The trust fund, the one with the accumulated checks, still sat untouched. We'd talked about it several times. Roland wanted me to take it, use it for Soleil's education, for a better apartment, for anything I needed. I kept saying no, not because I didn't need it, but because I needed to know our relationship could survive without it, that it wasn't built on financial obligation, but on actual love. Finally, on Soleil's 6-month birthday, I made a decision. I'm going to take the trust fund, I told Roland over dinner. But not for me. I'm going to use it to establish a scholarship for first-generation medical students. Women who have to work their way through school like I did. Women who don't have wealthy fathers to fall back on. Roland's eyes filled with tears. That's perfect. It's called the Lorraine Mitchell Scholarship, named after my mother, the woman who actually raised me. He flinched slightly. I didn't apologize for it. That's fair, he said quietly. That's more than fair. I want you to contribute to it, not with money, with time. I want you to mentor these students, show up for their graduations, write recommendation letters, be the involved father figure you never were for me. I'll do it, whatever you need. And I want you to know something. I reached across the table and took his hand. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing it because I want something good to come from all those years of pain. I want other daughters to have opportunities I almost didn't have. I want your guilt money to become something meaningful. It will be, I promise. We sat there in the restaurant, father and daughter, finally on the same side of the table. Was everything perfect? No. There were still awkward moments, still times when I felt the old anger rising up, still nights when I lay awake wondering if this new version of Roland would last, or if he'd eventually retreat back into his old patterns. But I was learning that relationships aren't about perfection. They're about showing up again and again even when it's hard. They're about choosing each other, choosing presence over distance, choosing vulnerability over pride. Roland was learning that too, slowly, imperfectly, but he was learning. And Soleil was growing up surrounded by people who loved her. She would never know what it felt like to wonder if she was enough. She would never press her face against a window watching taillights disappear. She would never spend decades building walls to protect herself from abandonment. The cycle was broken. I broke it. Not by being perfect, not by having it all together, but by being willing to give someone a chance to change. By choosing hope over fear. By letting people in despite the risk. Some nights when I'm rocking Soleil to sleep, I think about that phone call at 2 a.m, the one that started all of this. The moment when I finally cracked open the armor I'd worn for 27 years. I used to think that call was my weakest moment. The moment I finally admitted I couldn't do everything alone. Now I know it was the bravest thing I ever did. Because strength isn't about carrying everything yourself. It's about knowing when to ask for help. It's about letting people see your mess and trusting them not to run away. It's about building bridges instead of walls. My father asked me once if $4,000 a month wasn't enough. Now I have an answer for him. No, it was never enough. Because love can't be measured in dollars. Presence can't be purchased with checks. And family, real family, is built with time and tears and showing up again and again, especially when it's hard. But here's what I've also learned: it's never too late to start. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to become the person you should have been all along. Roland was 62 when he finally became my father. I was 34 when I finally let him. And Soleil is 6 months old, and she's already got more family than she knows what to do with. That's the real inheritance. Not money, not property, not trust funds. Love, presence, people who show up. Everything else is just details. 1 year later, I'm sitting on my porch, the porch of the house I finally bought with money I earned, watching Soleil take her first steps across the grass toward her grandfather. Roland catches her when she stumbles, lifts her up, spins her around while she squeals with joy. He's been here every step of her first year, every birthday, every holiday, every ordinary Tuesday that means nothing and everything. Behind me I can hear Camille and Mama laughing about something in the kitchen. Aunt Ruby is directing the food preparation like a general commanding troops. Even Roland Jr. is here awkwardly trying to help and mostly getting in the way. This is my family now. Complicated, imperfect, built from broken pieces and stubborn hope. I think about the girl I was a year ago, alone in a hospital bed, bleeding, terrified, calling a father who didn't know how to be one. She wouldn't recognize me now, not because I've changed completely, but because I finally stopped being afraid to let people in. That's the thing about armor. It keeps you safe, but it also keeps you alone. It protects you from pain, but it also protects you from joy. You can spend your whole life building walls so high that nothing can hurt you, and in the process, you wall yourself off from everything that matters. I know because I did it. For 27 years, I carried my father's absence like a shield. Every achievement was proof I didn't need him. Every success was a weapon against the man who left. But shields get heavy, and weapons don't keep you warm at night. What finally set me free wasn't revenge, wasn't proving him wrong, wasn't watching Victoria get arrested or winning some kind of moral victory. What set me free was letting go. Letting go of the story I'd told myself about who I was. The strong one, the independent one, the one who didn't need anybody. Letting go of the anger I'd been carrying since I was 7 years old. Letting go of the fear that letting someone in meant letting them hurt me again. If you're watching this with a wound like mine, if you have a parent who chose absence over presence, if you've spent years building your whole identity around proving you don't need someone who should have been there, I want you to hear me. Your pain is valid. Your anger is justified. Every wall you built made sense at the time. But those walls are hurting you now. They're keeping out the love you deserve. They're making you carry weight that was never yours to carry. You don't have to forgive the people who hurt you. That's a personal choice, and nobody gets to make it for you. Some wounds are too deep for forgiveness. Some betrayals are too profound to ever fully heal. But you can let go. You can put down the anger that's been exhausting you. You can stop proving things to people who aren't even watching. You can let yourself need people again. Not because the people who hurt you deserve another chance, but because you deserve to stop suffering. My father failed me for 27 years. Nothing can change that. No amount of showing up now erases the empty chairs at graduations, the missed birthdays, the thousands of nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering why I wasn't enough. But holding on to that pain wasn't punishing him. It was punishing me. He was living in a mansion. I was living in a prison of my own making. The day I made that phone call, the day I finally admitted I couldn't do everything alone, was the day I started to get free. Not because he suddenly became the father I deserved, but because I finally stopped letting his absence define me. I am not the girl whose father left. I am not the woman who proved she didn't need anyone. I am not the sum of my abandonment wounds. I am Genesis Price, a doctor, a mother, a daughter finally after 34 years. A woman who learned that strength isn't about doing everything alone. It's about knowing when to ask for help. It's about being brave enough to give people a chance to show up. It's about choosing hope over fear, even when fear is easier. Roland is walking toward me now, Soleil on his hip. He's laughing at something she did. His whole face lights up when he looks at her. I used to think I wanted him to suffer, wanted him to feel the same loneliness I felt growing up, wanted him to understand what he'd cost me. Now I want something different. I want him to be happy. Not because he's earned it, but because his happiness doesn't cost me anything, and my misery doesn't give me anything. There's freedom in that, in wanting good things for people who don't deserve them, in letting go of the scoreboard you've been keeping your whole life. He sits down beside me on the porch. Soleil reaches for me, and I take her, settling her on my lap. "Thank you," he says, "for giving me this chance, for letting me try." "You're actually doing it," I say. "You're actually showing up." "I wasted 27 years," he says. "I'm not wasting any more." We sit there in comfortable silence, watching the sun set, listening to our family laugh inside. This is what I wanted. Not the trust fund, not the reconciliation, not even the apology. Just this. Someone showing up, someone staying, someone choosing presence over distance time and time again. Money was never the answer to what I needed, but it took me 34 years and nearly dying on a delivery table to finally understand that. If you're still carrying the weight of someone else's failure to love you, I want you to know something. You don't have to carry it anymore. Put it down. Let yourself breathe. Let yourself need people. Let yourself be loved. Not because the people who hurt you have changed, but because you deserve a life that isn't defined by their mistakes. My father asked me if $4,000 a month wasn't enough. It wasn't. It never was. It never could be. But what he's giving me now, the time, the presence, the showing up day after day, that's enough. More than enough. And it only took us 27 years to figure that out. If you learned something from my story, if it touched something in your heart, please share it. Share it with your sister who's carrying father wounds. Share it with your friend who thinks she has to do everything alone. Share it with your daughter who needs to know that vulnerability isn't weakness. Leave a comment below. Tell me your story. Tell me about the weight you're carrying and the freedom you're seeking. We're all in this together. All of us wounded daughters learning how to let love in. And if you're a father watching this, if you've been absent, if you've been sending checks instead of showing up, hear me. It's not too late. Make the call. Get on the plane. Show up at the door. Your daughter is waiting. She's been waiting her whole life. Don't make her wait any longer. This is Genesis Price, signing off, with my father beside me, with my daughter in my arms, with a heart that finally learned how to heal. Be blessed. Be brave. Be willing to let people in. That's where the real life is. Trust me, I spent 27 years learning it the hard way.